I do this well, I've done this like twice now in the past, but I have the recording, so I'll put up the recording.
Okay.
But we're live now, so we've been going for like, I don't know, what, 10 minutes?
Yes, roughly. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
so to
Uh,
check into the audio version of the podcast if you want to know what we were talking about before just now. I saw the little thing come up and be like, "You should go live," and I'm like, "Oh, come on."
oh wow, that's cool. Is that an AI feature?
No, it's not. And
uh,
now I'm just mad.
all right. As a summary, let's see. You're going to. I think you were just about jumping into the topic that we wanted to discuss, which.
Yes, I was segueing.
Right, right. Yes, yeah, yeah. So the idea is I guess one of the big components is one. Um, Actually, you were talking about something else that was tangential with AI and whether it can be incorporated into products or not. But then there was another piece, which was um, what was the first question? Should we use AI, or how do you use AI to deploy things, or am I starting to conflate the topic with what you're trying to set up?
Yeah. Uh yeah, so the stream I was trying to find the stream title again. We're
Ah,
reliving
yeah.
moments ago. Yeah, the AI mindset and data governance. And so I had
Mm,
a good conversation with a friend this week. We were talking about all the AI stuff like we've kind of talked about, and as I was saying, I I'm for folks who might be new, I build AI with AI, and I've
mhm,
been doing it for a long time, 7+ years. Classical machine learning, NLP, natural language processing. I've built models. I've built generative AI. I've implemented generative AI, and I'm lucky enough to have implemented generative AI into customer-facing products before the whole craze has started. And then I made a point that I'm not convinced that generative AI belongs in
mhm.
customer-facing products, um, in most cases, and that it's really good for code, it's really good for ideation, it's good for summarization. The reason it's good for code is that it's deterministic output, like you
Yep.
said,
Right, right.
and you can compile it, you can run it, you can see if it works or not, and fix it, and it can sit there and loop through. Whereas everything else just isn't that way.
Mhm.
And fundamentally, a non-deterministic software, which is what generative AI is just going to make shit up or get stuff wrong, and you as a business owner or you as a product person have to be comfortable with something in your product knowingly not being correct. And there are
Potentially,
very
right? But
few
yeah.
things in business that are okay with that, right? And like if you're using it as part of your job, that's a totally different thing. I think there's all sorts of room for software features for like in B2B settings, like how do I make my job better, how do I shave time, that kind of stuff. So I guess that's technically customer facing. I guess when I think customer, I think like B2C, like
Mm,
a random person using your product and then you having to support that. And so there's
got it.
limited, I think, space with generative AI to help with creativity, that kind of stuff. But you still have to be in judgment, and you still have to be the one making the final decision. And in a customer facing product, now you're asking the customer to be doing the thing that they're probably trying to pay you for.
Like the vetting and understanding
Yeah,
whether your
because
thing
like
is supposed
human
to
in
be
the
doing what
loop
it's
is a
doing.
way and like, we're kind of talking through too. And now that we're on live stream, um, you end up getting into these conversations with how do we make it deterministic? How do we ground it?
Yeah.
And that to me, you're just defeating the whole point of it, right? If you're
Mm,
using a non-deterministic thing and then you're trying to shove it through all these deterministic filters, why are you using the non-deterministic thing? And almost all the time, it'll come down to you could probably do it in a different way.
yeah. Right. Right. Yes. I don't disagree with that.
Yeah. So, and the joke is, I always, I start with people is like, what are you trying to do with AI? Well, we need to get it in the product. Well, that's bad. Like you've lost. And then the second piece is, are you okay with it being wrong with your customers?
Hmm, hmm.
And so, that being said, like, what is the AI mindset? That's kind of what. And so, I was talking with a friend, and then I was like, well, we should talk about this on the podcast because I know you're interested in it too. But um, I have a really hot take, I think, on the AI mindset. So I don't know if you want to warm everyone up. I've been going for like 10 minutes already.
Yeah. 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 Right. And we are talking a little bit before too. I
Yeah.
think we have similar mindsets in
Yeah.
in the AI when we're talking about the AI mindset. But I think we're both maybe ahead of the curve in how we think that AI is going to be eventually be adopted into our
Yeah.
current work streams, right? And we're sort of seeing this already with a lot of discussion. Surprisingly, the technology in AI has been moving quickly, but we haven't quite seen the quote unquote these outcomes outside of maybe some techno optimist
Yeah. It's all
tech
bullshit.
companies who are claiming that AI is doing all of the work, right?
Yeah. It's all bullshit.
But yeah, there's a discussion, or there are discussions about um, the actual implications of adopting AI in large enterprises, or having AI actually do anything that's meaningful, or coming out of the product or test stages.
Yeah.
So there's one phase where it's okay, how do you transition from people building proof of concept stuff into actually getting things into production? And we've
Hmm.
talked about this a little bit in the past, where people would be building proof of concepts and then say, hey, I built the thing that we're supposed to be doing, let's go and deploy it, and all of a sudden it doesn't work because
Right.
production scale is very different than proof of concept. But then there's another piece which is like super forward or super far into the future, where the way we work will be fundamentally changed by AI, and how we work within teams, with
Yeah.
each other, and with AI. But taking a step back towards the first phase of, currently we haven't quite seen the productivity spike that we've been expecting or hearing about,
Yeah.
C-level people talking about with the rise of AI.
But
Um,
it's a lot of people who don't know anything and about what the people who do the work
right,
do.
and I think that's part of it, is the AI
And there's
mindset,
this
is
massive
understanding some of that.
abstraction on top of abstraction, and there's a lot of details that actually matter in operations. And a lot of these people are just living in a world that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Sorry, folks, if you're mad, I don't really care. Like it. I've been told for the last 2 years that AI is taking my job.
Mm.
Still waiting.
Yeah, has it really been 2 years already? Where
I
people were
know,
saying
right?
that.
And and then
In
it's
some
it's
ways,
always 6 months. It's always 6 months. And yes, the shit's getting better all the time. And yes, this is the worst it's ever going to be. I do think we are going to plateau very soon. Soon can be a day or 2 or 3 years in tech land, right? Everybody always thinks about these things on horizons too, of like days, hours, weeks, months. And it's like humanity's been around for like 1,000 years. In our
yeah,
current
yeah,
iteration, we've been around for like 200,
right,
maybe. So like everybody needs to cool their jets a little bit on like soon, but like in the technology just in Ian and I had a podcast that was out a couple weeks ago on the channel.
right, right,
We
yeah,
talked about that, and we talked about how the architecture and infrastructure, there's definitely room and capacity with adding more compute and memory and all this other stuff, but at the same time, the fundamental math, the fundamental architecture, the fundamental problems get a little bit better and less difficult to solve for with higher scale, but don't seem to go away.
yeah,
And there's no evidence that that is going. There is zero evidence that LLMs will stop making shit up,
right,
hallucinating.
right, yeah.
Zero
Just by the
evidence.
nature of, yeah, by the nature of the
Yeah.
way that they're built, right? Yeah,
Right.
the way
Stanford
that
put
they
out
work.
a paper and it was validated somewhere else where the mathematical proof is true.
Yeah,
It will
there's always
never
going to be
not do it.
some margin of, right. Yeah,
Yeah. And fine, and there's again ways to guard that. And I don't think it's the end of AI, but I also think like again, the core question is, are you okay with the thing making a mistake? And to what extent?
right.
And we've talked about the trolley car problem before, on actually probably a few times now, but yeah, people make mistakes too, right? I'm
Hmm.
not saying that anyone's perfect, but the reality, the difference is that you can train that person, you can teach them very easily. AI, you train that person, and then it forgets how to do something totally different. And that's
Yeah,
just the nature of how these things work and how the models work and the networks work and all this shit. And so, yeah, people might do that too. You put enough information in front of people, they don't remember details, but we know how to work with that and we know how to correct those systems, and people are pretty adaptable and most people change pretty quick, and so you can get things done a lot faster. It's kind of the age old computer problem of you write the software for a condition, business changes, now you got to rewrite the
yeah,
software,
yeah, 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 right.
right?
still in a way, weirdly enough, that's still how the world works, right? Now with AI,
Yeah,
it's just
no,
faster.
and
It's
it,
just
and it
faster.
isn't well. The story I was telling earlier today, like a perfect example, I think, of the illustration of like how you have to really change your mindset and how you
Correct. Yeah.
change how you work with this technology. Um, the I have a podcasting app. If you want to find it, you can find it. I'm not going to plug it, but it was a real conversation from today actually, where one of my friends is a tester on the new version, and there's been some crashing issues, and it turns out that the app was writing to disk in a way that iOS didn't like,
Yeah. It
and
flagged it as
iOS
something. Yeah.
yeah, and iOS just ends it, and so then the app crashes because it's not doing a thing that it's expecting to be doing, and I got a crash log. That was kind of my suspicion. I've been working on this kind of issue for a little bit, and so I got a crash log from him. Thankfully, there was one, and I gave it to AI, and I said, "There's a crash that seems to be happening. What do you make of it?" A couple of minutes later, it spits out, "Oh yeah, this is exactly the problem," and blah 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 blah. Took a look at it, and I was like, "Oh yeah, it actually is the problem."
Mm.
Like, nailed it. Um, did a patch, put it out, probably fixed it. The condition that's happening, but I mean, so it's funny you laugh, and I can hear people at home being like, "Yeah, but AI doesn't work."
Right. Right.
But what we were talking about earlier, and my response to my friend was like, I was like, "Hey, this is the frustrating part of AI because AI wrote the code that didn't work, right?" And then I had AI look at the log, and it was like, "Oh yeah, well this is obviously why it doesn't work." So why didn't
Yeah.
it just know that? Because it clearly knows it, right? So I have a condition where I've proven that the model has the information, the knowledge, the reasoning, whatever you want to call it, but it didn't do it.
Yeah.
Why
Yeah.
not? Well, because that's not how the model works, right? And I could probably get pretty deep in the weeds on why it didn't do that the way it did. At least my conjecture, because we don't really know like
We don't know
how it
exactly
makes the
why. Right. Right.
determinations, but we know enough about, well, I guess we technically know how, we just don't know why it chose what it did. Um, but when I say stats at scale, that's what it is, right? It wrote the specific routine to do a thing, and we've run tests, we've done good software development practices, and we hit a case where we found a bug.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you and I were talking earlier, and so again, the model obviously knows how to fix the thing, the model knows how to do it the right way, the model did it in a way that it didn't do what we needed. But I was talking with you earlier, and my frustration with the anti-AI crowd is that that's how software development works.
Yes. Exactly. Right. If I could throw in an egg, that the
Yeah.
reason I laughed when you said it probably fixed it was I can count several times where, as an engineer, I myself have seen like a crash log or something, and I go fix it, and I say, okay, I think my fix fixed it. I'm not sure
Mhm.
though. I think I did it right, but I'm
Yeah.
not sure. So it's from a human engineering perspective, it's almost the same exact thing. Where as an engineer, I may know the reason why something may fail, but it's not top of mind. So I don't actually build a solution around it until I encounter the problem. And I'm like, oh, of course, that's why it
Yeah.
doesn't work. And then I go
Yeah.
back and fix it, or I go back
And
and I think I fix it.
exactly. And I learned this all the hard way too, like memory management back in the day
Mhm.
before, auto memory management, you'd run
Auto
a
vacuuming. Yeah.
no one
Yeah.
is ever going to write a name that's 15 characters long, and then the
Yeah.
first person to do 16 crashes the app, right?
Yeah.
Uh, you found an edge case,
Right.
and you cannot plan for every single contingency, every single edge case. There's lots of things we can do to kind of hedge for these things, but it's impossible. Bugs happen. And the goal is to catch the bugs before the user does,
Right. Right.
right? But it doesn't always happen. And so in this case, we were talking earlier, and I was like, this is software development, right? So we wrote the app. Um, for folks at home, the position of play, so as you're listening to the episode, gets recorded, so that if you pick up on another device, you just pick up in that location, and that's a right to the iPhone storage. Pretty mundane thing. That's how it works. That's how you do it. I mean, I guess I could directly do a network call from memory, but that's a whole thing.
There are different ways to do it, but yeah,
Yeah,
no, that's
yeah.
one way, and
Well, the
probably the
reason
better
we
way
do
of
it
doing
that
it.
way is
Yeah.
because there's very tight memory restrictions in Apple
Uh,
land,
uh,
and
yes, there are.
so
Yeah.
if you, it's really hard to monitor your usage by and keeping the app fast and fresh and all this other stuff. Um, and so one of the easy ways to do that is just write it to disk. But instead of writing it to disk, it was basically, instead of writing the update to the disk, it was basically rewriting the whole database, I guess, is maybe,
Mm,
it's not really what happened, but it's kind of a way to think about it to make it make sense. And eventually the iOS just decided to stop letting that happen.
mm,
And so if you listen to a podcast that was over 3 hours, it would crash because that's, I guess, the limit from Apple.
yeah,
And like we were talking earlier, is like, well, when we did our testing, I listen to podcasts all the time with my app. I guess I don't listen for 3 hours or to 3 hour plus podcasts.
yeah, yeah,
Um, but someone did, right? And so we found a bug. And but it's so easy to say, well, AI built this app or this part of the app or whatever you want to say. AI doesn't work. Well, no, it
yeah,
did work. It just it we hit an edge case in software that we weren't planning for. And I was like, this happens all the time when I build software with people or I write software.
yeah,
Um, and your point I think was interesting earlier, where you did bring up that a good iOS engineer probably wouldn't have done that. Um, maybe not. It's hard to say. It's and I think I said something like, yeah, I could have probably read all the developer documentation and figured it out
yeah,
too, and
yeah,
AI could have probably too. But it's also one of those things where
definitely.
it's like, I don't know. Looking at how it was done, I was like, yeah, it looks fine.
Mhm,
You don't know what you don't know, right? And so
yeah,
now I
yeah,
know that we need to look at memory management and iOS specific limits in the future. But at the same time, the app's been out for 4 months and this hasn't been an issue.
yeah,
So, but I think again, it's like, trying to tie this back for folks. It's the mindset you have to have is you have to get out of this idea of perfection. You have to
yeah,
get out of this idea that you're going to describe something to the AI and it's going to magically know what you mean.
right. Oh, that's a big one. I think a lot of people
Yeah.
struggle with that is they're expecting, and honestly, there's probably a lot of work that people don't see behind the scenes of,
Yep.
or at least in the early days, those like prompt cleaning that like
Oh, there
any
still is.
any
It's just
apps,
built into
yeah,
the harnesses
right,
now,
yeah,
right? And it's
exactly,
not
yeah,
as
yeah.
transparent. Yeah.
So for those who aren't familiar, is like when you type something into an AI prompt is whatever you're typing the prompt into, like if it's a Claude app or Gemini or even ChatGPT, they take your prompt and they sort of restructure it and they do stuff to it to make sure that the model itself has a better understanding of what it is you're trying to do. I mean, it's not magic, but
Yeah.
Midjourney was actually one of the other things. So Midjourney was one of the earliest AI generation tools out there for
Yeah.
creating images. And anytime someone would send it or give it a prompt, it would sort of restructure it to give these nice, pretty images. But yeah, yeah, there's it's not going to be magical, and I think that's still unfortunately something that people are still expecting, even though the technology has gotten so good. Uh, Early on, it was people were expecting it to do magic, and even though it's getting better, or maybe because it's been getting better, people are still
Yeah.
expecting it to be magic.
Well, yeah, and it's interesting because I've kind of completely on that topic. I will write a really good paragraph,
Mm,
right, and give it to AI, and it'll spit out usually pretty good stuff. But what I've learned to do is think through contraindications better
hmm,
and think
yeah,
through uh we oftentimes will focus on what can go wrong in life, and it's
as
really kind
humans
of,
are. Yeah,
yeah, and it's really kind of hard to think through what can go right. And so what I found is like I'll tell it what I don't want it to do or things to look out for, and then I'll have it do something, and then I'll always tend to follow up with my prompt of like giving it almost like a user story and like a product sense of like, this is how I intend the thing to actually work. So
yeah, yeah.
here's what I want, here's some details, but here's what I actually think should happen and kind of how think it should happen. And then the other critical thing I think with this stuff too is then I always tell it like, don't bolster my confidence, don't tell me I'm right, don't, like ask hard questions, make sure you any assumptions you make, let me know
You
and
declare
ask.
them right. Yeah.
And depending on the fidelity of what you're trying to do, you may or may not need to do that. But I think so many people try to do too big of a thing with a prompt or a few paragraphs. Um, and that's kind of going into the iteration idea. But to kind of close this thought out, um, I've started doing kind of like a almost internal monologue of like what I would do with my team
Yeah.
and ask those
Yeah.
questions like, why are we doing it this way? What about what happens if this happens? What about this? What about this? Sometimes it's like, oh yeah, it's fine. Sometimes it's like, oh, that's the most brilliant idea ever, and we need to look at it.
Yeah. Can
Anyone
one hear
who's
about?
used AI knows it
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
bumps
Well,
you up
no.
too
Yeah.
much.
Yeah. I mean, you said something I want to highlight again because
Yeah.
as once you mentioned it, I was like, this is actually a perfect way to describe the topic at hand. Is we as people tend to think about what can go wrong and not what can go right,
Yep.
and that's not only good in this context, but I think in life in general is
Yep.
people tend to veer towards the negatives, not towards the positives. But that
Yep.
mentality or that mindset of what can go right, I think is how people need to adopt with AI because
Yep.
things will go wrong. But
Yep.
then it's what can go right if you adopt AI properly is what is really the most impactful piece.
Yep.
Um,
And you might be wrong on that too.
yeah, you're right, right.
Humans are
Yeah,
really bad at estimating, as we've talked
yeah.
about. If you don't believe me, listen to Cameron talk about it as part of software development on one of the podcasts we did. The it it's just so funny because it's just so easy.
Mm,
I was talking with someone this week too, where I was just like, the biggest problem right now is not critically thinking. It's not
mm,
knowing how to critically think. And the AI mindset, you need to have critical thinking. You need to think critically because if you're working at a company with people who have been there for a long time or several months, even if they're everybody's new, it doesn't matter. If assuming you are not brand new to the industry, the job, life, and you have experience, we have this giant brain full of information, and we have a culture, and we have a bunch of inferred and implied uh, information floating around in there that you don't even think about. Like unconscious bias is something I think about a lot, where you just kind of trained on a way of thinking about people. For people who know what unconscious biases, it's humans' ability to prejudice things based on just how you're grown up. And it's not that you
mm.
grew up in a prejudiced way. It's just if you only grow up around white people, you see people who aren't white, you're
That's
gonna
all you know. Yeah.
yeah, you're gonna be a little, I don't know if necessarily fearful, but you're gonna have problems. Like same if you only grow up with black people and you encounter white people or Asian people or whatever. Like it doesn't it's just how people are wired, and it's the idea of the tribal people. It's like I'm afraid of people who don't look like me. I You can pick your family out from a mile away in a crowd of people typically. Like that's hardwired into us to know,
Mm,
like, and babies and mom and dad, right? Like they can pick up on the smells and the hear, and we don't think about this stuff anymore, but we have all of this human programming built in. And so if I give you a couple sentence slack to be like, hey, Nathan, I need you to build this thing, you probably are like, oh yeah, I have a rough idea of what that might
yeah.
be,
Right. Right. Yeah.
right? Um, or you might have no fucking idea,
Also, I've encountered that before. Yeah.
right? But you would be like, hey, I'm not really sure I follow this, or oh, is this in reference to that meeting we had, which is a whole nother set of context. The problem with AI is like AI only knows about the context that you tell it. And every conversation you're in, or every workspace or project, or however you want to bifurcate it, it has a very limited set of knowledge that it can work on.
Mm,
Not only that, the context window, so how much the model can actually like hold in its memory and to even think about, is the same thing as like if I were to sit here and give you an hour long instruction set on a feature you wanted me to give you, your brain is going to sit there and probably zone out and try to protect itself from my hour long mindless dribble. But we have all these attention things built into our mind where you'll pick up on keywords, or again, you have all this context, and I'll say something, you'd be like, oh yeah, like that thing we talked about a month ago, and I just bring that in. AI can't really do that very well.
mhm,
And the amount of information that it can hold in its context at any given time is very large, but it's also incredibly small compared to what humans have. And so it would be like the equivalent of every time I talk to you, you had to relearn English.
yeah.
And then you had to relearn the company. And then you had to relearn the product. And then you had to relearn how to use computers. And then you forgot you didn't know something, and then you had to go to the library, and then you had to go learn how to read a book because a book is different than a website. It's like, these little things that we just take for granted, like reading on a website or reading in a book is like the same thing, Andrew. Well, for AI, it's not.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really not. It's very different. And it's a very different thing to go to a library. One, you have to probably get there. Two, you probably have to use a different computer system you don't know. Maybe you ask somebody and they know how to use it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So these what we think are mundane, very simple things are actually very crazy complicated, which is how awesome our brains are.
Yeah.
But AI doesn't have that. And so you have to either adapt to that structure or work in very different ways than you would with another person. And so again, like the kind of prompt idea there is, um, telling it what you want it to do, giving it some context around like, hey, you're an engineer, here's how we code here, and you sometimes have to do that every conversation, sometimes every turn. It's a whole thing we could probably talk about. Um, and then you get an output. And I think a lot of people there, it's like, hey, Nathan, I asked you to do this feature. Where is it?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Probably not a good way to run a product team, let's say, or an engineering team in this regard. Um, but that's what we're doing with AI. And then
Yeah.
AI gives us something. And so now you have to change. So normally if I give somebody a task or ask somebody a question, I expect a response or I expect a correct answer, and I don't know, or go to this person, right? AI doesn't really do that. A lot of it's because it's how it's programmed, but it doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
And so it'll give you an output, and now you're in an iterative loop. You have to iteratively improve upon the thing that you just built. And the bigger, larger, more complicated the thing you're trying to
Mm-hmm.
do, the more of this you're going to have to do. And I think this is where people really fall down, is that they expect, I want to make Facebook clone. So I want an app that's like Facebook that I can use with my friends and I can run on my iPhone. Okay, beep, boop, bop. Here's a thing that probably works 80%.
Right.
Well, Facebook wasn't invented in 20 minutes either.
Mm-hmm.
And but it does so well, but also so poorly
Yeah.
at the same time. It's for people who are really technical, they, I think, focus on the negative of like, well, it didn't do all this other stuff that it needed to do. For the people who aren't technical, they kind of focus on that, what could go right. Oh, I
Yeah.
built the
Yeah. Yeah.
Facebook app
Yeah.
that I wanted. And they don't
Right.
know what they don't know. And so being aware of this stuff is number one, but then having critical thinking to say, okay, I'm going to do the login process. Oh, the login process doesn't work. Oh, the feed doesn't work, blah, blah, blah. Now I have 100 problems. So critical thinking, now you need to use that to say, what's the most important thing? Well, I need to log in to be able to use the app. So let's focus on the login thing.
Mm.
And I think the power of doing kind of a broad sweep and then focus points within that sweep, you now get the full power of the model in a very narrow context. And that's where it does really, really, really well at.
Mm.
Right. So
Mm.
I want the login to have, this functionality. When you log in, the page should look like this. Oh, actually, the page should look like this, whatever, blah, 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 blah. And now you have to zoom out for it because it can't
Right.
do it. Remember, it's got to relearn everything in the whole world, and maybe we'll get there, maybe we won't. And so, but now you have to be thinking about what else changed. What are the other, and maybe you don't know. You can ask AI and say, hey, we changed the login process. What are the other things we should be thinking about in terms of security, in terms of uh, database backups, in terms of, and like this is where the experience piece really helps me. And it's hard for me to
Mm.
kind of pull back because I've been doing this for so long. But now I have to think for it. And I have
Yeah.
to highlight the blind spots. I have to, you can have it kind of steel man its own self too. You can use AI to say, hey, okay, we just built this thing. Uh, what are things that could go wrong? What happens if we get 100 users? What happens if we get 1,000 users? But you still have to critically think, like,
Mm.
you have to think about what could go wrong, but what could go right. Well, we got 1,000 users. That's not a wrong thing. That's a good thing.
Mm.
But it totally changes what you just built and how you would deploy it or how you would interact with it. That's a whole nother line of stuff that people, get chased down. But then the other thing that I see, and again, this is part of critical thinking, is now you have this whole other body of work. Well, in an engineering team, we would say, that's a large, extra large t-shirt, and then that shit doesn't ever matter. It's hard. We all agree that it's hard. So we're going
Yes.
to turf that to the next sprint or the next quarter or whatever. And we're going to focus on how do we get 20 users on board.
Right.
Okay, AI
Yeah.
says great. Now I have to know to move on to something else. And we go fix the feed. And okay, we fix the feed. Maybe it broke something in the login, right? Or maybe I said in the feed, I want everything to be ordered by username, but in the login, we don't have a username, we have an email.
Mm.
Right. And so now I got to go test it, or I got to, automatically test it. But I have to be thinking about, we built this thing in this context and it's narrow. So I have to be good at kind of working in the narrow context, but then I know I have to zoom out and think about what are all those other edges that we might have hit, or other, what could go right, what could go wrong, those types of things. And again, you can use AI to help you with it. You don't have to know all this tech stuff. I don't want people to sit there and think, well, Andrew just knows how to do the tech engineering. And
Hmm.
no, you don't. But you have to be able to think about the what ifs in ways that you can then prompt the AI to help you with, because it does not do a good job at self prompting. And now
Yeah.
you're in an iteration loop forever.
Yeah, well, so yeah, the iteration loop is one thing. There are a few elements here. Like there's something software development lifecycle, right?
Yep.
These are things that engineers are very familiar with, and people who are even tangentially related to software engineering, you'll hear about, right?
Yep.
The idea of having AI work as part of that cycle, I think, is a good way to think about how to work with AI, especially in engineering, because that's kind
Yep.
of the way people would work with it.
Yep.
So knowing what that is like, and then having the AI buddy to help you walk through that process. If you're not a technical person, you'll this is sort of like first principles thinking. You'll fall into that
Oh,
cycle anyway, and there's a reason why people talk about the
and
cycle.
you can learn it, right? It's a
Right,
process
exactly.
about
Yeah.
of thinking more than building tech. And a lot of people who work in tech do this. Like to your point,
Hmm.
first
Yeah,
principles
exactly.
thinking.
Yeah.
And kind of going back to the login analogy, like what does a login mean? So everybody has this different picture of what a login means. So AI is going to give you a statistical representation of that. It's probably email, password, maybe name,
Mm, yeah.
right? So now you have to think. Pretending we're building it for friends. How are your friends going to get in? Do they have emails? Maybe
Mm,
they don't. Do they have a phone because it's a phone app? Maybe we use phone number.
hmm.
How do we build that? Or maybe we build the login with Google, login with Apple. That's a whole nother thing,
Yeah.
right? I want someone to just be able
SSL
to use
login.
a,
Yeah.
a, a second authentication system. And I know all about the shit, but I don't know how it works. Hey, AI, how do I, improve this? Oh, now I have to go do a bunch of other stuff. Okay, great. Help me do that. But you have to be, it's almost like an empathetic exercise. And it's the same thing you do in a product engineering
Yes, I was
team,
going to
is
say,
to
yeah,
say,
yeah.
right, I
Think
think,
like
but
the
I think a
user,
lot of,
right?
yeah, and I think a lot of people building with AI, it's like, how do I want it to work? Well, you can start there, but then you have to zoom out and you have to start thinking about, what if I don't have an email,
Hmm.
right? Everyone has an email. What if I don't have access to the email? How do I forget my password, right? And I'm specifically sticking on a login thing because I think everybody's been through this before, where there isn't an easy way to get your password, or they send your password to the email and you're like, I don't have
Mm,
access to the email. How do I get in? I guess I have to call someone or something, right? But you can do all this stuff, and AI, can't potentially do that. But so instead of having to know all of this stuff, you can say, what are the common ways people get locked out of an account? Or what are the common
mm,
ways people log into an account? And is it going to hit all of them? No, it's going to give you the statistical sampling of what most apps do, and that's probably fine. But you have to know how to do that. And so it's like, I should almost just do a critical thinking 101, because like that's what this is. I
yeah,
learned how
that'd
to
be
do it.
amazing. Yeah.
You can learn how to do it. You can probably Google it or ask AI. But you have to get in these iteration loops where you have to go deep and focused with the AI, and then you have to know that there are edges, and then start to ask questions either to the AI or yourself to try to identify what are those edges that I might get into.
Mm.
And then the bigger, more complicated thing you build, the worse it gets. But that's also
100%.
software.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, yeah. That's life in general. I think that the
Yeah.
larger things are, the bigger the scale, the more things that can go wrong will go wrong. Yeah.
And again, I think like non-technical people don't think a lot like this, but this is how you build software. These are bugs that you encounter. These are, how do you test? You have your testing team. It's like, do you need to know all the ins and outs of this stuff? No, but the more that you work with your AI through these types of things, the model also starts to learn and then starts to think and make those connections for you. Because again, it's like it's lobotomized. It doesn't know what it doesn't know, and it's
Mm.
only going to respond to what you ask it to. And the more broad you get, the more statistical variance you get. So you have to if you don't know when to go broad or when to not go broad, you got to learn it, and then you have to start to test it. And asking open-ended questions, right, is a way, like anyone who's ever interviewed someone,
Yeah, yeah.
works great with AI.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's an experiential element to it where like you can learn all the concepts of these types of things, but it sort of manifests in a different way when you actually go through the process. Like you learn
Yep.
through the wisdom kind of thing. Uh, from like a conceptual perspective, like the whole broadening, focusing. There are so many ways in different fields that this has been sort of explored. Right? There's explore exploit. Then
Yep.
there's like double diamond in
Yep.
design thinking. There's like
Yeah, you don't have
TikTok,
to
which is like
invent it,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
You can
exactly,
ask
right, right,
AI, what are the software development methodologies,
yeah,
and
yeah,
say, hey,
exactly,
let's follow this one. And is it the right one? Who knows, right? There is
right.
no right answer for any of this stuff we're talking about. Building software, there isn't a right way to do it. There's a lot of ways to do it. And I think that kind of gets to my other point too with the AI mindset, is this idea that you're going to ask it to do something, it's going to do it the right way, and there's going to be no problems. That's not real.
Mhm,
And then for me, in terms of business, the question is really now, how do you use your engineering talent to build systems that non-technical or non-engineering users can use in a safe way?
mhm.
So again, we're using non-deterministic systems. I don't think it makes a lot of sense to try to make them deterministic or to put them through filters to make it. I mean, there are instances where that can be. I don't want someone to come back to me
It's
and
an
say, "Well,
edge
you said
case,
it's
yeah.
impossible."
It's
But
it's an edge case,
right, if you're
sure.
spending all your time trying to make the thing deterministic, you're doing it wrong. And if you have a disagreement, then you probably understand more about this than most people, and that's okay. But the 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 pieces for that then get more complicated, but it's also more abstract, right? It's a different level of engineering abstraction. So like you have code repositories, and you have, you know, deployment stacks and all this shit that nobody should really need to know about. So like, um, how do you make an environment where people can work in that, or
Mhm,
modify? I hear so many times, like, we have product managers in the code base doing PRs and shit. I'm like, that's a terrible use of a product manager's time, right? You have an engineering team, you have AI. Frankly, I would have AI do my PR. I wouldn't do
yeah,
my PR. I'd have AI do it, and then maybe I'd look at it, maybe I don't. Um, but this attachment to the human system with this AI technology is just not right. You have to figure out how to make it work in your current environment to move out of it. And one way that is to figure out, how do you work safely with AI? How do you make sure that, and this is kind of where the data governance piece comes in, like, how do you make sure you don't expose AI or data to
yeah.
AI? How do you make sure that you don't expose, the wrong data in AI systems, data security, all this kind of stuff? We've been going for 40 minutes, and we had a little bit before this, but I think just generally speaking with the data governance pieces, we should probably do a whole podcast on this, but
Mm.
I would question how valuable your data actually is.
Oh, interesting. I like that approach actually.
Yeah. And,
There's
and
certain fields
how,
where yeah, it's an obvious answer, but I think in general, it's a
yeah,
fairly good way to think about it.
and how unique or proprietary it might be, and what
Mm,
happens if it leaks. And again, it's like, what could go right? Well, we use all the data and we make a cool thing that no one ever thought about, and we make billions of dollars, whatever. But it's almost like a counterintuitive idea, but it's like one of the things I've went through with the team was like, let's just assume this gets leaked, then what?
mhm,
Right? It's on the dark web. Now what?
mm.
What's the most important thing we do? And it was interesting in this specific instance is, how do we know it's our data?
Oh, that's also a good way to think about it too. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right? Just because there's data leaked, and some dark net person is claiming your company leaked all this data, or they hacked you. How do you know? Like,
Mm,
maybe you have logs and shit. Fine. If you have truly proprietary data, how do you know it's your proprietary data?
Mm.
So there's a whole line of thinking there that my people are probably have not thought about first, and then they're like, oh shit, yeah, that's actually a really good question. But then yeah, like how unique is your data, how special is your data, how, you know, and the PII thing too is, it's crazy in some regards, but like um we kind of need to update these because, like, one, I would argue, do you need to collect the data in the first place? I
Yeah,
fight this
right.
battle all the time as a product person. Like, do we really need first, last name, mother's maiden name, social security number to sign up
Hmm.
for our app?
Yeah.
Sure. Like, can we just collect an email? We know it's a unique identifier, then we don't have to give them a unique ID that we tie everywhere. And there's all sorts of little data stuff you get in there. Um, but and then if you do need to collect that, like, do you need to use that for the system? And maybe you need to do some re-architecture work with
Hmm.
your data governance or your data store, lake, warehouse, army, whatever you want to call it, right? And there's all these words that some people know, some people don't. Um, where you need to enable access to things in ways now that you probably didn't have to do before. But this idea that no, you can't access the data because this is the way we do it and we can't give you that information is insane.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah.
And you need to figure out a different way. And that's what your engineering team should be working on now, is like, how do we get other people to be able to use our stuff without having gatekeepers, because gatekeepers just slow everything down in the beginning or anyway. And with AI, like, most people can do most coding just fine, with an
Yes,
asterisk of
yeah.
scale deployment is hard,
Yeah,
right?
I agree with that. And unfortunately, there are situations where the engineering team become the gatekeepers,
Yeah,
especially when something like AI comes into it,
right.
the picture.
And from a business perspective, you know, you want to get the most value out of your engineering team, you want to get the most value out of your company. But I think it's kind of insane now to think that a small group of people in the company is going to just do all the work.
Right.
And with AI, you get an abstraction layer of a lot of stuff where you have to figure out how to feed it responsibly. And again, are you, you know, with your AI is probably another side of data governance. Are you sending it to a company, or are you processing it internally?
Hmm.
That's a big question. And like, why should you? Why shouldn't you? Well, everybody always defaults to our data is sacred and safe and special, and we have to do it internally. Is it though?
Mm. All right.
Right. And if it isn't, do we need to do it internally?
Mm.
Right. There's a cost. Usually I go to cost because it gets really expensive at scale to use the foundational models, but it's really expensive to build your own infrastructure too. And it's really hard.
Right.
And so that's always the build versus buy trade-off. And then your specific instances may vary. But with a lot of the foundation companies, like, you can get all sorts of protections and stuff, and that's as good as any contract. Like, do you trust your IT vendor to do antivirus scans and not steal all your data? Like, at some point you have to trust the companies that you're working with or your partners, or you don't trust them, and that's a whole nother way of
Yeah,
operating, right?
yeah. That's a
um,
good point. I think many people didn't quite, at least in the early days. Maybe it's still a question now, but the idea of companies using foundational models with concerns that the
yep.
foundation models would, or the foundation organizations running or hosting those foundation models would be using your data to retrain those models.
Right.
Yeah.
And like an easy, like, non-abstract way to think about this is, um, can you expose your data model and not the
Mhm,
data?
mhm,
Oh, we can't do that either. Well, you probably can, and it's probably fine.
mhm,
So I'm a business person doing business stuff in the business company, and I need a report, right? Everyone's been through
yeah,
this before. So the old way is I have to probably log a ticket to IT and they ignore me or forget about it, or I have no idea what I'm talking about. Maybe it makes it to the engineering team who's actually responsible for the data. Maybe it isn't. Maybe it's 50 departments are responsible for it. Really shouldn't matter in my business mind, but in the tech world, it's everything's on fire, right? Going through a data governance process, is the data actually matter if it goes somewhere or not? Usually, probably not. You got to do your homework. If we just throw all the data to the model, the foundational model,
mhm,
and ask it whatever Andrew's massive report idea is. Another alternative could be, could we expose the data model and maybe some data catalog information about what is there to a model and say, Andrew is really interested in these 5 things, or how would I write a query for
Mm-hmm.
this? And maybe we have an internal, query system. There's a million of them out there. I'm not going to plug any of them, but business analyst tool or something. And then can it help me do some of that gritty work that normally I'd be like, I don't know how to do a query, right? Or I don't know what SQL is. I just want it to work. That's another option. Now you've empowered Andrew to make his own report, or take at least a shot at his own report with AI. And maybe I get 80% of the way there. And then I can say, hey, Nathan, here's a report I was trying to make. This isn't really looking what I think it does, or this is what AI told me, and I think it's kind of right, but it won't run. That's a
Mm-hmm.
totally different problem now. And
Right.
we've moved out of that chain of control hierarchy to, I have a kind of a more defined solution or an outcome of what I'm trying to get at. I did some of the work to try to get there. Maybe I got it and I just didn't isn't the way I want it, or maybe I got like an error. Now you're helping me with an error instead of having to sit and talk to me and generate a whole report or go through one of these like product discovery processes that can take months,
Mm.
right? And so that's a really easy way to enable AI without exposing your data, and getting your team empowered to work with AI and internal systems. And I don't have to know what a data model is, right? I don't have to
Mm.
know what a data schema is, but if you can expose that to your users and say, here's how our, I don't know, give it a, here's how our financial system operates without the data, right? Our
Mm.
internal accounting system or whatever. And I'm sure people are freaking out about this. Again, you've done your due diligence. You've said the data model is fine. It's proprietary. You don't want to publish it on the internet, but you have a business agreement with the foundational model, and you're trusting them that they're going to uphold their agreement. And again, you got to read the agreement. You got to do the due diligence. You got to, don't take my word for it, but let's just assume that you trust the technology partner you're working with. Maybe that's acceptable for you. Maybe it's not. You have to go
Mm.
through um, that process to determine that. Most people are going to say no. That's a whole nother thing, but most of the time it's probably fine. The third way is like, how do you embed AI in your systems to just go touch the data with like an MCP server, or other ways that other software can help AI understand the actual data, or use the actual data, or do the actual query for for Andrew, I guess in this case, to make it happen. That's the world we live in. But
Mhm.
getting to that world is incredibly difficult. And again, well, I'm not going to sit here for hours and explain how all this stuff works.
Yeah.
And hopefully that
How to
those,
become AI native, right? Um,
yeah, and hopefully those ideas are breaking people through some of these problems, because you want to get to that point of like, not is our data sacred, and should we do anything with it, to how do we enable AI tools, either internal hosted or foundational hosted or a mix, to interact with data when it's appropriate, and making sure Andrew has access. How do we figure that problem out? Right? That's
mm,
not a problem most companies have solved, but that's a problem you now need to solve. Just because the data schema is there doesn't mean I should even have access to it. There's ways you can do that, right, with other tools. But like, maybe I can have access to the schema, but I can't have access to these 10 columns.
yeah.
We need to figure that out. And the part of the problem with this for like thought leaders or executives out there is that people get really protective of their shit,
Yeah.
and they invent all sorts of human reasons why that's not allowed, or why that shouldn't happen, or why only my team can do it, right? And
Yeah.
the people challenge, the people problem with this is like, that's an interpersonal dynamics, inner team dynamics problem. That's a management problem. And you got to have your management shit together first before you even start all this. Cause like we were talking earlier, solving a tech or solving a people problem with tech doesn't typically work. And then you just
Right.
solve the wrong problem.
Mm.
But you have to figure out a way to, and I don't know, I could give Andrew's management podcast here at some point, maybe, but there's all sorts of ways to deal with this kind of stuff. There's all sorts of ways to do this. There's all sorts of frameworks. But you have to guard against that. And shit, some of the strategies, I guess, are fire. all the middle management.
Yeah. I think I don't know if we talked about it on the cast before, but yeah, that was one of the things that we talked about was
It is
in the
a
AI native world.
solution. It might
Yeah,
not
yeah.
be the right solution. I'm not
Mhm.
necessarily endorsing it, but it is a solution. Um, the other, having a top-down mandate to like make it happen in a
Yeah.
specific way, in an actionable way. It's not enough to say we need AI. It's not enough to say we need AI data access. It's like we need the financial accounting team to be able to run the quarterly report with AI if appropriate. And instead of taking 6 weeks to run, we need to cut it in half.
Mm.
Go make it happen. And you're going to get pushback. Oh, we can't do it, cut it in half, blah, blah, blah. Well, that's management. You got to figure out how to get through that with your people. But you have to give people an ambitious goal to push them through a lot of these built up patterns over careers of how things work. Because in the world of AI, it's totally different.
Mm.
AI can read your entire database probably and make determinations with people who can't even understand what's there. And there's ways that you can make your database more descriptive to AI so it can help you answer the question better and faster, right?
Yeah.
And that's where you want to get, but you have to get through the my data is not sacred and not super secret, or this data is super secret and we definitely don't want to expose it, or these shapes are things we don't want the world to know. We're fine working internally with our own models. And like I think those are really the three decisions is like what doesn't ever go out of the company or the team that works with the data, typically nothing, but that's a whole thing. What are we comfortable doing internally or with internal tools that we're running that don't leave our thiefdom? And then what are we comfortable with in a foundational model capacity? Yes, the data is leaving the company. Yes, these some of the smartest people in the world are working at these companies to safeguard your data too. So again, it's like if you trust Databricks, you probably should be trusting the foundational model companies to some extent with some of the data. I
Mm.
think people are slowly getting around this, but again, it's like, how do you decide this stuff? There is no right or wrong way. There's a bunch of processes, and maybe we should get into that at some point in the future. But I think there needs to right now be a really challenge period of why is this data needing to be secure? Why can't this data leave the company? And then you have to have an actual honest intellectual conversation with all parties involved and come to a conclusion. And
Mm.
that's going to make people really uncomfortable, and that needs to be okay. Most companies, it's not okay to be uncomfortable because you're going to get fired.
Mm.
And that's a management problem. So maybe the solution to AI data governance is fix your fucking management problems.
Fix your human problems.
Right. Well, if you don't feel psychologically safe at work, you're going to try to hoard your little data corner.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not trying to fault technical people. Anybody who's not technical listening to this is going to be like, oh, yeah, that's my tech team. That's my IT team. Maybe, maybe not. But you also have to understand from like their perspective, they're the ones who have to fix it when the AI breaks it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you have a culture in your company or a managerial practice of punishing people when things break, they're not going to want to try something different. They're not going to want to explore with you. And the problem with AI is that there is no right way a lot of times. And it's exploration. It's being back to what we were saying, like, how do you change your AI mindset? You're in an iteration loop, right? You got to try
Mm.
shit. And if it doesn't work, you got to know why it doesn't work. And you got to either try something else or go a different direction. It's not
Yeah. Yeah.
magic, right? It's the creative process, which we talk about all the time on the podcast. But I'm hoping this is tangible enough for people to, because like this is not a like data governance 101 guide. Like,
Mm.
oof, I've done enough of these things and conversations where I don't know if I can stomach that, but maybe we should try. I have a graphic of buckets. We can
Oh.
move things between the buckets.
Oh, do you have that already done, or is this something that you're
I've
visualizing?
had to
Okay.
build those things many times, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
De-siloing your data.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, there are a few things I think we discussed. Uh, the last piece about people being protective of their data. Unfortunately, we are in a time where people are talking about AI taking jobs, and we've talked about this before too.
Yeah.
So it doesn't help that that through line is constantly being projected out there, so that people who um, may want to work with AI feel like they can't because there's this sentiment that if they were if they didn't have control of the data and the AI take it, then oh well, AI is going to take your job because you're giving it your whatever you're defending. Right?
Well,
So
and that's the narrative, right? But the
yeah,
reality
right.
is that your company can grow. I guess this is more for executives, thought leaders. Your company can grow whatever leverage you think the AI can give,
Mm,
right? So if you have a person today, they have 1x leverage. If you think AI can double, triple, quadruple, 10x, that person now becomes 2, 3, 4, 5 times more valuable
yeah,
or
yeah.
or productive or however you want to. And yes, this stuff's not quite linear, but the reality is if you're using the tools and embedding the tools in the work of your people, they can do so much more work so much faster.
Mm,
In most cases, there's some stuff AI just isn't good for. And basically anything where you have to actually work with people or touch people, like physically, or like do something in the physical world, we're not even there yet. But in a knowledge worker digital world, all sorts of productivity opportunity. And I think that's the managerial problem of having to be very clear with people and demonstrate that, like, yeah, we're going to try some stuff. And sure, we're probably going to leak some data, going back to data governance, right? And like, let's make sure that we leak the minimum amount of data possible. Let's make sure we know we're leaking the data. Let's make sure that we can stop the data leak and prevent it from happening in the future. And like, let's make sure we don't leak the wrong data.
mm,
But the, and I think a lot of the reasons that people have been getting fired in these big tech companies is they're seeking profits. They also overhired during
yeah,
COVID, and
yeah.
we're
It's
seeing an
complicated.
unwind from
Yeah.
that. The reality is, in companies this large, there's lots of people sitting around not doing valuable work or as
Mhm.
valuable work as someone else. That's probably true in every company, honestly, over a couple people. Like, again, management problem, but you don't need to fire a bunch of people because you implemented AI, and you need to make it clear, but you also have to make it safe, have a safe environment for people to be experimenting and trying stuff.
Yeah,
And I think that's probably the key of the AI mindset, right?
yeah,
And we were talking a little bit earlier about what happens when everyone does their own AI thing.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
What
if
happens?
well, they
I mean,
well, I mean,
no,
my
go.
answer, right? My answer was, well, you're then reliant even more on the rituals that you're doing today, your team stand-ups, your team
Yeah, yeah,
meetings. Like,
the team
how are you
building stuff. Right,
communicating today?
right.
And if you're not doing that today, management problem, and you need to figure that out,
Yeah,
right? And you have to be able to do multiple things at once. So you have to say, hey, we're going forward with AI. We have to, and we're going to find stuff that breaks. What's not breaking? And you as a leader and you as a manager have to get in there and be working with your team. And when people are getting really frustrated, hey, Nathan, you seem really frustrated. What's going on? Oh, fucking AI. Oh, okay. What can I do to help? What's not working? Right?
mm,
It's fucking empathy shit that, like, it sounds so weird. I always feel weird talking about stuff like this, but I see it over and over again in every company I've ever worked. People forget humans are over here or next to you,
yeah.
right?
Unfortunately, right.
It's like I've seen people be more kind to somebody like crossing the street than they are to their coworker or their like employee.
Yeah.
And it's just like, what is what's in your, I don't understand that mindset. You just got to be good at people. But anyway, now I'm just ranting.
And it's not, unfortunately, not really helping with that. But
No.
we've talked about it before. When you're working with AI, try to work with it as if it were another person that you're working with.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Uh,
Well, our first cast back in what, 3-4 weeks has been
almost a month.
almost an
Yeah.
hour now, or we're over an hour with the pre-recording rant. So if you've stayed with us this long, we went we went live, or we started recording but we didn't go live, or I don't know what the button, there's too many buttons for me to push. I need an AI to fix it out.
Yeah.
But the audio recording will be a little bit longer, I think, or maybe I'll just cut it to match what we did here, because I think that was a good
Oh,
start.
okay. Yeah. I mean, we did a quick summary jumping back into it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of these topics are top of mind for a lot of people. And as AI keeps being a topic of interest, which it probably will be for a while,
Yeah.
these same issues are going to come up, right? There are people problems. Um, the technology is great, but it's not magic. Um, how do you keep it how to keep working in the same style, I guess, as in working with AI. And working with AI requires a different type of working or thinking, but we shouldn't forget that we are teams of humans building
Yeah.
things. Um,
And you can't expect to introduce AI in the way that you're working and nothing to change.
right, right, yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's not going to just be a plug-in. Life is as is. It's
Yeah.
going to change things, and change is normal, right? I think that's kind of something that we've talked about as well.
And constant.
Yes, yeah,
Well, happy Friday. And happy
yes,
May
it is Friday.
1st. It's May Day today.
I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah.
I'm so under a rock. I
Let
didn't
me
know, but yes, happy May.
let me it is May Day. I should have opened with that.
I don't even know what May Day is now. I have to look this
Yeah.
up.
Well, it's a European thing that we've kind of
uh,
hijacked here, but I want to make sure I get it right here. So according to AI, so full disclosure, May Day is celebrated every May 1st. It's a dual purpose holiday marking both the arrival of spring and International Workers' Day.
ah,
It commemorates the 1886 Haymarket Airfair in Chicago, serving as a global day of rallies, marches, and labor protests for workers' rights, while traditionally featuring a maypole, dancing, and floral spring focused celebration.
happy May Day, everybody.
Happy May Day.
All right.
I'm gonna go to my May Day parade now.
Now that you
It's
remind
like
me, I think
literally happening right down the
I
street.
have to go do mine as well.